with this last one, he kind of came in and he said that would make a you should do a podcast. He said that would make
Yeah.
a good podcast.
Well, I say
But
Harriet wants me to write a book, and but I just thought, the problem is I can sit here and talk to you about it because you were there, or I could be sitting in a bar and somebody can mention a band and I could just reel off a story. But
that's right.
to sit down on your own in a room with a fucking computer and think, well, what the fuck did I do? It's like, Jesus. I mean, I used to use my laminates on the board as my CV because people say, who have you worked with? And I go, I ain't got a fucking clue. I've forgotten more
Hmm.
people that I've ever worked with than I can remember. I mean, Jesus,
Yeah.
I was listening to the radio this morning. It's fucking hard. It's J.K. and Kelly, what's her name? And I remember, hang on, she was his first fucking tour manager. I resigned from him to go and start work with the Stranglers in '93. Came back and he was at number 11. I knew he was going to be massive, but he was a
Hmm.
wanker. So I just thought I can't fucking work with him.
But this is what happened to me, Don.
There you
I went
go.
into the
Exactly.
loft, and they'd all been because I come home and I just chuck them in the corner. You
Yeah.
know, Hats just kind of like puts it in a bag or puts it away, and they all ended up in the loft. And yeah, you look back and you see, like, I mean, I've looked at my CV, and the biggest tour, the first major tour I did was with Metal Church. That's my first kind of like,
Yeah.
wow, big band, and that was '93. You know, but before that, like the Clubfoot in the Clarendon, and
Yeah.
upstairs at the Clubfoot, and all
Uh,
that. I
fuck
mean,
the
this was,
Clarendon. Oh,
touring back then was
Joe and I fucking stood outside the Clarendon the day they knocked it down with a four pack of beer and applauded. That's the one in Hammersmith.
that's right. That's the
Yeah,
bus station now. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, me and Joe actually went there the day they knocked it down. About bought 4 cans of Stella and stood and watched because we used to do that on a Saturday night with Frankie Blackwell stuff, RMS, humping up
That's
the
right.
tub,
That's right.
humping up 4 flights of stairs in the '80s. Fucking
Hmm.
shithole.
Oh man,
I
you know what? The first time I did that, I could not breathe after the
Yeah,
first time going up those stairs. I just thought, what have I got myself into?
yeah.
Lifting those
And
amp
then,
racks up those stairs.
I remember doing a band called the Meteors, and I said to the guy, "What do you want in your monitors?" He went feedback. I went fuck off. Fucking feedback. But here's what I did. I got a friend of mine, a Canadian friend of mine, oil worker in Thailand, and he runs this big charity golf tournament. So I gave him all my laminates. I mean, fucking Michael Jackson, Fleetwood Mac, all of them. I give them to him. Harriet didn't want them. She took a couple, Kings of Leon, a few like that. Uh, and he fucking kept the Michael Jackson one for himself and sold the rest of it for charity. I said, the fucking Jackson one would be the one's going to earn you the more money, you silly bastard. Uh, well, I noticed just to your right, you got a poster of the Stranglers. I've got a laminate from that tour. Well, I did have the.
Look what I found, Don. In my loft,
Oh,
I can't believe this came about. But in my
that's
loft, rolled up,
yeah,
see that
yeah,
poster? That is from the Falklands tour,
right.
'97.
I'm trying to remember the Chris years.
Chris years were between '95 and 2001, just. So we were tipping it off in 2000, or I was tipping it off with you lot in 2001.
I
And
seem
that,
to remember it was '94, and but by '97 I had finished, and that was when I got the first Harry Hill tour.
yeah, that's right. And I went out with a few of them with Avalon because we were both doing Al Murray. What an
Yes.
absolute star! He used to so talk about you, actually, which was mad, which really wound me up because I was like, I'm your favourite.
well, I think you worked with Al after I did,
Well, I worked with
because I
him.
was
I
with
worked with
Al.
him before. Then I went away, and then I came back. And you did that bit in between. I ended up working doing some tour managing for Frank Skinner. I didn't have to do anything, to be honest. I just turn up and I talked into a microphone, and I went 1 2 1 2. take
Yeah.
out this frequency, take that one out. There you go, Frank. You know, which he loved. Anyway, this one occasion, we were in the Park Lane Hilton Hotel on Hyde Park there, and he was doing about a 45-minute kind of like award ceremony, and he was getting 45 grand for it. I knew
Yeah.
that. And they'd put him into this really nice room, you know, top suite at the top of the hotel. And can you do the gig? Yeah, no problem. So I said to a friend of mine, I said, can I stay at yours tonight? Because rather than trying to get all the way back to Aylesbury at God knows what time, I could just rock up and kip on your sofa at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. That'll be all right, wouldn't it? He's like, yeah, no problem. So we do the show. Everything's good. And I sent Frank up to his room and, you know, okay, Frank, I'll see you whenever, you know, and da-di-da-di-da. Are you going? I said, well, yeah. That's a shame because I wanted to kind of go down and have a few drinks and stuff like that. And I wondered if you'd just kind of be with me. And I said, well, yeah, because not a few drinks, but because he doesn't drink. But,
yeah, I was going to say he doesn't drink. Yeah.
No. And so I kind of said to him, I said, well, yeah, I said that, look, my problem is that obviously they didn't book me a room at the hotel and I can't get back to my house after 12 o'clock at night. So I'm staying at a friend's and I can't really be rocking up at like 5 in the morning, you know? And he said, well, I've got a suite, you know, and it's got like two bedrooms and a fucking front room. You know, if you want to stay on the sofa in the other room, you know, that's fine. And then in the morning, when my car arrives, you can kind of just, you know, knock on my door and wake me up, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, fine. I'm good with that if you're good with that. I said, the other thing is, though, that I can have a pint, can't I? Because I was told not to drink in front of him. But I thought if I'm going to go downstairs all fucking night,
yeah,
you know, and he said, yeah, don't worry about that. So great. So we went downstairs and we mingled and da-di-da-di-da, and it comes and we go upstairs and we go to bed. Frank goes off into his massive suite. It's like, my own flat. It was bigger than Yeldon Road, for fuck's sake. That was just his department.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
I know. I've stayed with
anyway, in the morning, I get a phone call from his driver. Dan, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Sweet, no problem. Knock on the door. Frank, your driver will be here in 10 minutes. Yeah, no problem, Dan. And we come downstairs together and we leave. And in the car is his manager, the big cheese of Avalon. Yeah. Because they're going off to do a book signing. And Frank gets in the car. I say, see you later, Frank. Nice fun. You know, and off I go. And about a day later, I get a phone call from Janie Bell, screaming at me, get into the office right now. We want a word with you.
What?
And I'm like, okay. So I go into the office and I'm sitting there. And I said to her, what's up? I said, what were you thinking? I cannot believe that you did that. What were you thinking? What kind of a person do you think you are? That goes? And I said, what have I done? And she said, you can't just stay in the artist's hotel room, kip on the fucking sofa in the artist's hotel room. Who do you think you are? And I said, but he asked me to. What? Frank asked you to sleep on the sofa? I said, it was a flat. It was an apartment. And I had to stay because you didn't book me a room and I had to stay and I couldn't go and he wanted me to stay for the party and mingle with him and be there until 5 o'clock in the morning. He offered that I slept on the sofa in a completely different part of the apartment to where he was. Oh, what? Frank asked you to? Yeah. You think I'm just going to come and rock up and sleep on, you know? But also, where was my room?
I mean, can you remember the fucking space story with the Russians? Do you remember that one? Where they wanted Chris. Well, they wanted Chris to go into space. Oh,
they wanted Chris to go into space, didn't
they? and Chris wouldn't do it. And Paul Roberts goes, I'll do it. And I'm going, the Stranglers are not famous in Russia, for fuck's sake. Otherwise, I'd get you in there.
Ukraine.
Yeah, the Ukraine, right. The Ukraine was we had a travel day, show day, because the year before, the mafia had said Michael Jackson was coming and sold tickets, and he never showed up, and they pocketed the money. So part of Chris's contract was that he had to do a live TV interview in the city we were going to play the next day, so the people of the city could actually see him being there. So if you remember, we flew into Kiev on the first night, and then we did an interview at the airport. I remember that, and then we got on the bus and we went to the boat.
Well, I remember before we got on the boat, I remember having to try and change up some money. So whether it was just that afternoon, and it was a Sunday, or there were no banks open, I know that. And so I was standing there. It probably, I don't know if it was $20 or if it was £20 at the time. So I'm walking down the street and there's a market going on, and I asked this guy, "Is there a bank anywhere near here?" And he says to me, he says, "Oh no, no banks." He said, "Why, do you want to change some money?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Come with me." And I'm thinking, here we go.
Oh yeah.
You know. But then I thought, $20. And I said, yeah, okay, well, whatever. I'll go with this $20. It doesn't matter if I lose $20. So I went over and he takes me to this other stallholder. And he says, "Oh, you want to change some money?" And I went, "Yeah, please, you know." And he said, "Okay, how much you want to change?" And I went, "Oh, just $20. Yeah, no problem." And I thought, okay, well, here we go. And I'm holding my hand out and he's counting out these bills like this. And he ends up putting 4 million Ukrainian coupon in my hand, right? And I'm thinking, well, even if you fucking rip me off,
I'm still a millionaire.
I'm still way up. Yeah, exactly. So when we got on the boat that night, so when we actually got on the boat that night, I've done something that I'd always dreamed of doing. And when we got down to the casino, I went and put $1 million on black. I lost, but I put $1 million on black, and I always wanted to put $1 million on black.
Remember we got caught in the lift? We all got stuck in the lift.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bill, I didn't realize Bill was claustrophobic, and he started losing it. And the more I pushed the bell, the more they were shouting at us in Russian, and eventually they turned the fucking electric off so I wouldn't push the bell, which made Bill even worse because we were then in the heat, in the dark. And it was all because I think it was about 8 of us in the lift, and there was a sign in Russian that said 4 people only. Yeah. And of course, Bill Chucky and I were 4 people alone.
He didn't, and the thing was that it was lift doors, and then, but it was only for the outer skin, wasn't it? And then it was just this wall.
Yeah, it was just exactly. Yeah, it was
open
fine.
space.
But,
My God!
I think we were there for 2 days because I never used the lift again after that, and I was on the 5th or 6th floor, and I used the stairs for the next couple of days. But I was trying. Yeah, so we came into Kiev. We went overnight on the boat, and then I remember coming over to see you guys while you were trying to set up. And there was like 8,000 people there waiting for sound check because it was like a free open air, and the stage was right beside the river. But yeah, it was the boat that went down to Odessa, because I've just looked on the map. Odessa was further down. Because if you remember, after we did that show, we then got in that rickety, shitty bus, and we got the police escort for about 2 hours to some airfield.
That was the army escort, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and there was. I mean, it seemed like the whole Ukraine army.
Yeah, it was just weird.
Just come out, and we were in the middle of it.
And the bus
when we got to the hotel, didn't they line up either side of the stairwell? And you had this whole army, and we walked up the stairs. I can't remember exactly where this was, but we walked up the stairs into this hotel. And when we got into the hotel, I think it was Kiev. We got into this hotel, and the water wasn't working in the hotel. But in your bedrooms, there was the first thing you see when you walk into your bedroom was a jug of yellow water.
Yeah, I remember that.
On the deck.
That wasn't
this little sign next to it, saying boiled water.
Yeah.
Right, and then I remember going into the bathroom, and the bath
You know,
was yellow water.
do you not think that was
Phil,
Do you not think that was Minsk?
do you know what? That was
We had
Minsk,
all the
wasn't it?
soldiers on
Because
the floor, and I went down. The
yeah,
manager said everything all right, and I went, "Yeah, well, what's the army doing?" And he said, "That's your security." Oh, it would be fucking nice if you told us, because I remember when you said the yellow water, because it was Minsk flew into Riga. Because Jeff went for a shit, and I literally had my foot in the door to stop them closing the door for the flight from Copenhagen to Riga. Uh, and forever know after that was if you wanted a shit, you were going for a Copenhagen. But we got in about 4 o'clock in the morning, and then about 8 o'clock, I opened my door, and there's a guy standing there with no hair, no eyebrows, and a moustache and a Burberry coat on, and it scared me shitless. I shut the door, went back in, and did some accounts, and then eventually I fucking pushed past him, and that was when all the soldiers were down by the lift. And I went down, and the manager said to me, "Everything all right? Everything all right?" I mean, yeah, but what? I said, "Who are all these fucking people up on our floor?" He went, "That's your security." I said, "It would be nice if you fucking told us that." You know, I got people hiding behind doors because they think the people outside trying to kill them. And there's actually, and they were there for fucking crazy. Do you remember they took us out after the show to this club? We thought we were going for dinner, and they tried to put this show on for us. And then
oh yes, that's right.
yeah, and then Pete and Chris fucked off back to the hotel with about 15 security guys trying to get in the same van. I went, "Calm down, guys. Only two of them. Two of you go with them. The rest of you get back with us." And we stayed there and got shit faced. There was a table full of women at the back of the club for anybody who wanted to partake. Nobody bothered, I don't think. But yeah, that was the Minsk thing, because we did Riga, Minsk, which I loved Minsk. If you remember, I'll tell you what I remember about Minsk as well. I came down in the afternoon because we had to come in through a restaurant at the back of the it was like a Politburo theater, right? And we had to come up through a restaurant and cross the stage. And I got you and Trevor to rig a black so as we could pull it over so as the audience wouldn't see the band. So I did that. And then when I come in with the fucking band, we pulled the black. I shoved the band across the stage of the dressing room. I looked out, there was nobody in their fucking seat. There wasn't a soul in the place. And I had this little Russian interpreter, and I'd said to him, "Stand on my right shoulder. No matter what I say, you say verbatim." The motor. I said to you and Trevor, I swear, "Where's the fucking audience?" We had no idea. We went outside, and they had the people lined up, literally all the way up the auditorium at the doors with their ticket A1, A2, B1, B2. And I went, "Put some fucking music on, let the people in." Across the steps. And I moved them. And the girl walked up at the end of it and just stood beside Chris with a red rose, waited till he finished the song, and then handed him the rose and went and sat down again. That was Minsk. Because then we went
Yeah.
from there, we went to Vilnius, and then we were going back to Denmark to start a European tour. And I asked for 10 pizzas on the bus at 10 o'clock. And the girl went, "Why? We have a gala dinner at the town hall with the mayor." I went, "No, we fucking don't." No, nobody asked us. We have a flight out of Riga tomorrow morning to Denmark to start a European tour, and we're leaving straight after the show to Riga from Vilnius. We went to the airfield. If you remember, who was the keyboard, the saxophone player, Jeff. We were bounding down the runway to go to the second place when we could hear the buzzer from inside the fucking cockpit. When the co-pilot opened the door and actually closed the main door beside where Jeff and I were sitting. And Jeff shit himself. And the next flight we had to give him a Valium. You remember I ordered all that booze at each airport because the plane always had 4 guys sitting at the back, and they were really bad heaps of shit.
It was the scrappiest plane I
Yeah.
think I've ever seen. You know, you had a Chesterfield sofa strapped in the back,
Yeah.
you remember, right? And then all our gear piled up in the corner.
Yeah.
And like 2 seats in a row like this, and we're all sitting in this thing. And I remember as we took off in a very kind of bumpy way, our interpreter, who had a pilot's license, was throwing up when we came into land. I seem to remember. And she had a pilot license. And on the way up, as we get to about cloud level, this kind of mist starts to come in through the vents. It turns
Yeah.
out that it was the aircon, but it just so happened it was at cloud level, and I'm thinking, fuck me,
Fucking clouds are coming in.
it's played.
Yeah.
It was the scariest time. I don't know how
Yeah.
we would have even been
I,
allowed to do
I,
something like that.
I literally ordered beer, whiskey, and wine at each airport after that before we got on the plane, if you remember. Right? Because so on the morning of the show at the boat, that's when we heard about the promoter's rep had been attacked.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. One of their partners was leaving Kiev in a car with the money to help pay for the first show. But also part of that money was for the Kiev show as well. But they robbed him. It wasn't that they wanted to take over. They just, somebody in his office grassed him up. So he got robbed. But apparently they tried to tell me he was like 20% chance of living and 80% chance of dying, but he was still alive. And we were going, so what did they do? And apparently they beat him with a baseball bat, injected him with poison, put him in the car and shoved him into a lake. And we're all going, he's fucking dead. There's no way he's fucking dead. There's no 80-20 my arse. He's fucking dead, long dead. But what then happened was they asked us if we would, and I want to say it was Dnipropetrovsk, but I'm not 100% certain. And Bill and I discussed it with Chris, and it was a question of, well, can you sell this show in 24 hours? If we turn up on a fucking day, right, can you sell it, get us an audience for the next day? And they went, yeah, of course we can. So because we'd already been paid for the shows before we even left England, and on arrival, I said to the promoters, I've got a plane sitting on the tarmac in London. One phone call from me and fucking 3 hours, we're out of here. So don't fucking mess us around. Right? And they just literally lied to us from 1 minute to the next. But anyway, on this particular show, we agreed to do, so we went. And when we got off the plane, it was the same every time we got off a plane, waiting on the tarmac like a fucking, because everybody was there to see us because they'd all chipped in to pay for us to be there. So they all owned us. And Chris was really getting pissed off, and the mafia were getting their money. And there was a woman who worked on a boat, cruise liner, spoke perfect English, and she had this ticket in black and red cardboard with Chris's name embossed in silver on it. And I said to her, that's actually a very pretty ticket. How did you get them printed so nice so quickly? And she went, what are you talking about? I've had this ticket for 2 months. I went, funny, we only agreed 2 days ago to do the fucking show here tomorrow. How the fuck could you have a ticket for 2 months? And then on the last night, I remember, I don't remember where we were, we came to the stadium from the fucking airport and turned right into the stadium. They then told us that the plane would be ready at 1 a.m. to take us back to Kiev after the show. And I went, no, fucking won't. It better be ready at 10 o'clock. Otherwise, there's no show. And we had the argument all afternoon. And eventually they agreed, yes, the plane would be there at 10 o'clock. And I remember we came out of the fucking stadium and turned right in the bus and drove around this fucking town for 2 hours and got to the fucking airport just after midnight when the fucking plane took up 1 o'clock. And that's when we got back to Kiev. Right. And when we were in the bar, we could see the fucking promoters outside stopping the cars and asking them to take us to the airport the next day for signed autograph pictures because they'd ran out of money.
We then heard that, yeah, he died. The promoter had actually died. The gig was still going ahead. And we were going to be playing that gig anyway, but now it was owned by the mob. And so obviously Chris and yourself are like, no, this isn't happening. And we flew into Kiev and we pretty much made sure that we were on the next plane out in the morning. However, we didn't want to take our gear back to the hotel. So we left all our gear. You'd organised us to leave all the gear plainside so that in the morning it was already checked through and we could literally get out of town rather than and we did that early in the morning because we were running basically because they wanted us to do this gig and that's when we got on the plane. And then to top the whole journey off, the plane journey on the way home, which was an old Aeroflot, second-hand Aeroflot plane, which was now Air Ukraine. And to us, this plane was like royalty after the shit that we'd been on in that whole trip. And we're flying in, and just as we start to come into land over London, we go in into this worst storm I've been in years. And I had my laptop open and I was watching The Mummy 2 or something like that, Mummy Returns. And it's shaking. I mean, it's the worst turbulence I'd ever been in. It's shaking around like this. The plane is rattling. And you know, I'm thinking, this is a little bit worse than the Ukraine, to be honest. And I fold the laptop up and I don't think I'll be watching this movie right now. It's not the best movie to be watching as you're being thrown around. And the pilot comes on the tannoy and he says, you know, it's a bit of a bad storm we're going through right now. So I'm going to pull us up out the storm and we're going to fly in and come round underneath it at the Isle of Wight and then just fly low. And with that, he punched his way out of the cloud and we came in underneath the Isle of Wight.
Gatwick.
Yeah. But
yeah, because I stayed in Gatwick. I was in such a state because of that trip. I didn't go fucking home. I booked in the hotel at Gatwick for 2 days.
Mm.
I didn't feel safe until I was in departure lounge at Kiev Airport. And if you remember, what was in the departure lounge at Kiev Airport? A fucking brand new Irish bar. And the first person we seen, and I'm sure it was you he spoke to, was the truck driver who said, "Oh, see, they killed one of your fucking promoters." He'd seen it on the news.
That's right.
And and they were still at check-in trying to tell me the guy was still alive. Like, fuck. Do you remember the army on the stage in the Odessa show? With me going crazy. Yeah. Fucking Chris couldn't see over the top of them. He's so small. And then the promoter, I eventually told the promoter, if he doesn't move the army, I'm going to fucking pull the show. So he moved the army. Ellie had one of their hats on. And then he grabbed me and took me outside with the interpreter and then started telling me that the previous year, Boney M came and people were throwing bottles at them. And I remember saying, well, if I had to buy a ticket for Boney M, I'd fucking throw bottles. And then he said, yeah, but then after that, a Russian opera singer came down and somebody shot him and went, get the army back across the stage. The next thing, the soldiers came back right again. Fucking somebody going to shoot Chris over the fucking, and that was Odessa. I remember that show. That was a nightmare. The whole fucking trip, it was a mess. I've never been so scared in my life. I don't scare easily, but I even remember walking up from when we were on the Black Sea for the day on the beach. I got this VIP area, and I was lying all day on the surfboard on the water. And then going back up at night, it's starting to get dark, and I thought, "Ooh, somebody's going to jump out on us here." Because of that, I will never ever go back to the Ukraine.
That's right. We were told actually that at one stretch, that 100-meter stretch, you needed a police escort, right? And we couldn't see one, so we thought, well, we're big and burly. It was really scary. That was quite mad. The steps. I remember going to that bar and watching what's going on the steps of the Odessa. Kind of going down to the beach, and everything went on these steps. There was prostitution, there was drug deals, and it was just the way that it was like a marketplace. There's one set of steps going up and down to the beach. The thing is,
in the daylight it looked alright, but as it got dark, fucking, I tell you what, there was no lights. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Luckily, we all smoked in those days, so we all had lighters, but. I remember being very, very scared coming up from that beach. I thought, well, somebody's just going to get stabbed here. You know.
Well, I mean, what is that? That would have been around about 95, wouldn't it? 95, 96.
I'll tell you, the first trip we ever did was the Riga, Minsk, Latvia, and then. Yeah, because in the February '94 was the first time we went to Moscow. Because I remember it was the second week of February. It was -17, and we stayed in the. We didn't stay in the Kempinski, which is a nice hotel where we stayed the rest of the time we went. The first time we stayed in, I think it was the Victoria. The one in St. Petersburg was called the Astoria Hotel.
Just adding to the St. Petersburg, actually, like you said, that Jeff got visited in his room. I mean, obviously, did he just see the door open and close?
No. Somebody actually came into it after all that shit hit the fan. Because I remember telling everybody to go to bed. Because I wasn't. You were standing at the bar with Paul and Trevor and this girl, and I was sitting over at the table with Neil because Neil wasn't in a good place because we just heard about Alan, right? Then I remember a drunk guy coming over to her and then going away. Then the mafia guy coming in and fucking hitting her, and then literally dragging her out by the hair and kicking the shit out of her. And then when you and fucking again Trevor and I, we all stood up and went, "Oi, stop!" He pulled a gun. But anyway, it was me then that told everybody to go to bed. I probably then did go to your room where we drunk the minibar dry. But I remember the next morning, Jeff saying before we left that somebody had come into his room in the middle of the night. Because I'll tell you what I was amazed about the hotel. It had Sky Sports. That's how plush it was. And the fucking food was, the food was disgusting. I had a tin of beans, which I don't even like, that Pete Spencer gave me. It was the first thing I'd eaten in 3 days. Because the first day we were there, I went for breakfast, and you couldn't see the yolk in the middle of the egg because it was as white as the white. That's how old the eggs were. I thought, I'm not eating these. And then the shit food that we had at the gig, which was at Ice Hall, where, do you remember Janet Jackson played there the year before, had sold 20 tickets? We'd sold it out, obviously. There was thousands there when we were there. So yeah, and the other thing, which you were obviously at the gig when it happened, but when we left to do sound check, I lost it with the bus driver because we came out of the hotel, got on the fucking bus, and if you remember, the hotel was in the square. When we drove off and we got to the bridge, and he turned around and went back to the hotel, and I said to him, "What the fuck is he doing?" He was, "I have no idea." There was a woman outside the hotel wanting an autograph, and he turned the bus around and took her back and went and got her, brought her on the bus with us. And I went fucking loopy on his ass. "What the fuck are you doing? Get her off this."